Unmuted? Got it. Okay. Can you all hear us now? Okay, I see a head nodding. Great. We are here at City Hall. This is our first regular meeting of December for the Board of County Commissioners. We've come to City Hall for a joint meeting with City Council, in particular for we really have an agenda on housing. And the first on the agenda is a presentation on LIHTC from our SCEDD contractor, Michael Yerman, and CHFA will be joining him as well as land use staff. But before we get into that, I will go through our regular agenda here. And let's see. All right, and just remind everybody to please silence your phones. And we will start with a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. And those of you on Zoom or around the table, I guess, if you help me keep an eye on the Zoom participants, as I'll be going back and forth through documents and not necessarily looking at my personal Zoom screen, that would be very helpful. Do I have an approval of our agenda today?
I will make a motion that we approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, and just a point of discussion. And do we have item 4 prepared?
No.
Okay.
I'm gonna prepare it and then get it to legal and then get it to everyone.
Okay, so do we have to consider that, or do we want to touch on that and talk about it at
I
all,
think
or?
maybe just briefly.
Okay, all right, we won't remove then, we'll just
Okay.
touch on that as appropriate. All right, any further discussion?
No, thank you.
None for me.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, we'll move on to community informational items. Commissioner Marcella?
Transit work is still continuing. We should have some draft assessment points that will be shared with us and the stakeholder groups that participated in our initial stakeholder meetings by the end of the week. And so look for those. Those will come out quickly. Childcare work is still continuing. There's still room for participation on our childcare coalition. So if you'd like to participate, please get a hold of Hannah at LCBAG. And I guess not necessarily local informational item, but there was a wildfire in Idaho Springs over the weekend. So just be cognizant of what you're doing outside. It's extremely rare for it to be this dry. So just want to put that out there.
And it was very windy that day too.
Yes.
I saw that.
Yeah. So I think be prepared for a pretty eventful wildfire season.
Absolutely. Thank you. Commissioner Fiedler?
Maybe just note that the 3 commissioners, as well as some staff from Public Works, went to the Colorado Counties Incorporated semi-annual meeting, and just a great opportunity to talk about issues common to all counties, so including behavioral health, housing, infrastructure bill, and American Rescue Plan updates on eligibility rules and priorities, a meeting with fellow Mountain District counties, and lots of other side discussions on lots of topics. So just a great opportunity to plug in. Oh, and then priorities for the upcoming 22 legislative session. So just good to have us all there.
Yeah.
Representing the county.
Yeah, definitely. I don't have anything for today. Surprise. Okay. Any commissioner clarifications? I have none.
None for me. Thank you.
None for me.
All right. Public comments on items not on our agenda. If you could, we'll limit those to 3 minutes. And I see a hand up on Zoom. Jane Harrelson. If you state your name and your address before you speak, please.
Hi, I'm Jane Harrelson, 172 Rafferty Drive. And I'd like to remind everybody that Lake County Aquatic Center has been shut down a year to the date on Sunday, December 12th. And we need to replace the pool gutter, pool liner, and components of the HVAC system to safely open and operate the pool. It is more cost effective to spend over $4 million in total audit recommended aquatic and building improvements over the next 10 years than to spend 10 to 13 million and wait 5 to 10 years for a new facility. The building where our pool sits empty is structurally sound, according to the 2021 Colorado Department of Education School Report and the 2019 Lake County School District Master Plan. Taxpayers showed the funding capacity to operate Lake County Aquatic Center, spending an average of $96,638 per year from 2005 through 2019. During the same period, the Aquatic Center generated over half the total Recreation Department revenue. The pool was open during tough economic times here. Lifetime Fitness didn't come to town until 2010. Climax reopened in 2012. Tax revenue from marijuana sales began in 2013. We can afford to reopen, upgrade, operate, and maintain Lake County Aquatic Center. 253 adults returned a 2021 swimming pool survey. 94% of respondents are willing to pay taxes to maintain and operate a public pool. 95% reported they would likely support a ballot initiative for a public swimming pool. Let's not wait until after an election. Let's not wait for more survey results, more plans, and more studies. We know what needs to be done. We paid $60,000 for the 2020 Lake County Aquatic Center audit. It contains solutions, costs, and timelines to upgrade our aquatic center. 4 of the 5 renovation options presented were estimated to last 50 years. Please move forward to reopen Lake County Aquatic Center now. It's well within our reach. Let's do it for our youth, our elders, and ourselves, please.
Thank you for your comments, Jane. Do we have any other public comment? I see Jeremiah Lloyd raising a hand. Jeremiah, do you want to unmute?
Yep. My name is Jeremiah Lloyd. I live at 1508 Mount Massive. And I'm curious as to the wildfire mitigation plan that has been proposed and everything. What is the goal? Are we trying to just prevent one round of fires for the next year? Are we trying to knock them down and keep them down to protect our community? And I've addressed this to the police board in the last meeting. What is the possibility of us utilizing the probation office and getting some additional help out here to, number one, knock down all of the dead, dying, and get up all the kindling pretty much that is encroaching upon our community and our homes. And this is just a matter of public safety. It's a matter of revenue for the town as well. Because if this town gets caught in a major wildfire, like how it happened up in Estes Park last year, that is a very real threat as to what could befall our community. So I'm curious as to what can we do as city and county commissioners and everybody to minimize and prevent all of this from becoming Estes Park.
Thank you very much for your comments, Jeremiah. If you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to talk to you more on that, Jeremiah. I'll put my number in the chat.
I've reached out to you on Facebook a couple of times.
Oh, I'm not on Facebook.
Okay,
Not with the county.
Okay.
All right. Any other public comment? I am not able to, let's see.
I don't see anybody else. Oh,
Colleen, I see you have your hand raised, Director of Public Health. Go ahead, Colleen.
Hey guys, how's it going? I just wanted to share, as folks know, that we've seen an increase in our cases, which is not to be unusual in the sense of we just had a holiday and a lot of folks gathered, and we are finding that the cases that we are seeing are from some of those celebrations and large family groups getting together. And so it's just a reminder that people will continue that, you know, we continue to have COVID here, cases continue to come up. And then obviously when we have an event like a holiday that, you know, and that's what happened last year, is that we do see a pretty high increase. We're still pretty high in the scheme of it all. For example, we had 40 cases in the past week, kind of capturing some of that holiday gathering pieces. We continue to know that getting vaccinated is the best tool that we have. We have a large vaccination point of dispensing happening this week at Colorado Mountain College at 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. You can sign up online. We have links as well as walk on in if you feel that you need either a first dose, a second dose, a booster dose, and it is eligible for ages 5 and up. And that's all I've got.
Great. Thank you so much, Colleen.
Great.
Any other public comments? I don't think I see any hands raised. Trying to scroll my participant list here as well. Any public comments from in the room?
no, thank you.
All right. Okay, let me look one more time. Okay,
Not seeing anything.
all right, thank you very much. Thanks for that. Okay, we will move on our agenda then, and we'll go into new business. And so, like I said, we have Michael Yerman here with SCEDD, and we're going to talk about low-income housing tax credits, or LIHTC. And this is could be an opportunity and a method for the city and county collectively to approach housing solutions for the community. Is Kathryn Grosscup online, or I saw Jeff?
He is.
I'm here.
Okay, I apologize. I didn't see you in there. I'm navigating between applications here, so. All right, well, with that, I think, oh, there you are. Nice to meet you. I'm here with, let's see, we have, maybe we could do a quick round of intros real quick, just so you know who is online, because we have a majority of council members joining us via Zoom. So nice to meet you, Kathryn. I'm Sarah Mudge, one of the county commissioners, and I have my fellow commissioner here, Kayla Marcella and Jeff Fiedler. We have our town county manager, Tim Bergman, and Mayor. I'll let you.
Hello, Mayor.
Staff, Ann Schneider. And we have a council member Tim Hill with us in the room. And then if you want to go around on Zoom there, Dana, if you want to start. Or just say hello and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dana Green, City Council.
Okay, and Tracy.
Tracy Loretton, City Council member.
Okay, and I think that might be all. I think that's it. All right, well, I will hand this over to you, Michael, and let you give us a presentation, which I think you'll be sharing your screen online, so everybody.
Yes, I believe Kathryn is going to share a screen, but if you could please give her the first or if you have to assign somebody. But thank you to Kathryn, and I saw Jeff was on here as well. Sorry. And Kathryn, maybe you can introduce Jeff as well in your presentation. But I really appreciate CHFA coming to today's meeting. There has been several conversations around housing and LIHTC projects, and who better to give a good overview of LIHTC than CHFA. And they can tell you why here in just a minute, because they are fundamentally responsible for the program and all the great stuff it does for our communities around the state. And then after the presentation, I'm going to allow CHFA to finish up with any questions directly from the council or the BOCC. And then maybe if they're willing to answer public comment. And then from there, I will conclude with some updates on some other housing matters, but we can be respectful of CHFA's time and let them move on if they so feel so. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathryn. Thank you very much for coming and participating.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Michael. And thank you both to the commissioners and council for having myself, Kathryn Grosscup with CHFA, and Jeff Owsley, who's my colleague at CHFA. I'll be sharing my screen in a minute, but I'll introduce myself first. I'm Kathryn Grosscup with the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, and my job at CHFA is to manage the housing tax credit team, which is the team that allocates LIHTC or low income housing tax credits as along with state housing tax credits statewide here in Colorado. And Jeff, I've lost him on the Zoom here, but he is your community relationship manager for Lake County and South Central Colorado. So a great resource always to reach out for any CHFA questions. I don't think I have a ton of time today, so I'm going to share my screen. Does that come up? Somebody could tell me.
Yep, we can see that.
This isn't my normal platform, so let me. Okay, so I'm going to spend maybe 15 minutes talking through a high-level overview of the housing tax credit program, its role in financing affordable housing, and really why it is so often kind of the go-to linchpin resource for addressing affordable housing challenges. It is fundamentally a rental housing program resource, but there are some legislative changes on the horizon depending on what happens in Congress in the next 30 days or so, where there could be an ownership credit introduced nationwide that could also work on even more challenges with affordable housing. So I'll run through this and make sure that there's time for any questions from anyone here. So moving forward, a little bit about CHFA. CHFA is the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, and we were established in 1973 by the Colorado General Assembly. We are not a state agency, although we partner heavily with DOLA and other state agencies, but we stand alone with a board of directors that are appointed by the governor. We don't receive any direct appropriations from the state legislature or state general funds. We have the authority to use bond proceeds to finance both housing and economic development activities in our own operating resources. And to date, approximately $25 billion has been raised and invested in Colorado. And our goal is to finance the places where people live and work. At a high level, I know you all are working on the challenges of housing in your community, and it's sometimes helpful to sort of break that conversation apart into a housing continuum. And so this is kind of one model of how to talk about housing, because affordability impacts all folks across a housing continuum, folks who may be below 30% of the area median income, or sort of a local measurement of incomes in your community, all along the spectrum to long-term ownership, which often can be discussed at 100% or even higher of the area median income. The program I'm going to talk about, the housing tax credit programs, really by code end at 80% of the area median income. Most commonly focus on 60% of the area median income and lower. So often it's a program that really is addressing more of the housing continuum that's on the left side of this spectrum. So just jumping right in, and I know this is math already, but the idea here is to illustrate what is the challenge. What's the challenge of financing, constructing affordable rental housing compared to market rental housing? And in this chart, sort of have a side-by-side of how you would think about market versus affordable. Effective gross income is essentially a measurement or a marker of how much you can collect in rents. And obviously in a market rate, you're going to charge what the market will bear for your rental rates. Whereas sort of fundamentally, when we're discussing affordable housing, we're talking about charging less than market rents. And there can be different goals, policy goals, other goals of who you're trying to focus on, but at the end of the day, the rents will be less. So in this example here, it's something like a 90 unit building charging about $1,100 in rent. It brings you about just under $1.5 million of effective gross income each year. If you take away the expenses to operate your building, let's call it $355,000 a year, you come up with your net operating income, NOI. And this is where you sort of get into finance speak, but your NOI, your net operating income, is really the way that a financing institution would consider how much lending they would give to finance this project. So a typical debt coverage ratio for typical rental development is to have at least $1.20 in income for every dollar of debt that you would need to pay. So it's basically that you have a 1.2 debt coverage ratio. So here in my example, available for debt coverage is just under 950,000, which would back you into, with typical loan terms these days, about 13.8 million available to finance your market rate rental housing. Well, if you flip the script for affordable housing, where you have reduced your rents from those $1,100 a month to maybe $600 a month, targeting folks in the community who cannot pay market rents, you have less effective gross income. So in my example here, $677,000 on an annual basis. Your project expenses are not decreased. You still have to have the same utility costs, insurance costs, et cetera, type costs to run the building. Your NOI is significantly decreased, something like $250,000 here. Your debt service coverage from your financing institution does not change, so it's still a 1.2 DCR. About $200,000 available for debt coverage.
Hold on a second. We lost your audio for a second there, but I think we've got you back.
Uh-oh.
I can hear you now.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I don't, well, yeah, please just speak up because I'm not seeing otherwise. So I guess I'm just still illustrating the difference between market and affordable financing, with sort of the conclusion that when you have less rent, you have less ability to command debt to finance your project. So moving on, you basically get to a financing dilemma. The idea that lower rents result in lower revenue, and lower revenue results in lower borrowing capacity. And so therefore, to build affordable housing, you need one or sometimes both of two things. You need to subsidize the revenue, which can be done through operating programs like Section 8 or Housing Choice Vouchers, or you need to subsidize the asset. And that's where this program, or these programs, housing tax credits, really come in and make a big, big difference. So kind of the connection here is what are housing tax credits? What was this innovation from 1986 that has really been the most innovative way to build or rehab affordable housing nationwide? It was a bipartisan piece of legislation, and it's been highly successful, with more than 3 million units created through this program in its life to date. And it's a public-private partnership model. So state HFAs, housing finance agencies or authorities like CHFA, allocate housing credits through specified methods each year. They are allocated to developers of multifamily affordable housing, the green. So the developers who really come with the project idea. And those developers strike a partnership with investors who thereby, for the benefit of taking a tax credit over 10 years on their corporate federal filings, invest or provide equity to construct a multifamily rental affordable project. The investor, of course, carries that tax liability, and under these models, it's a 10-year credit. So they take that annual amount for 10 years. And the affordability restriction is a minimum by the federal standards of 15 years, but CHFA has a requirement of a minimum of 30 years, and in many, many cases, 40 years for these credits. So the financial benefit for the residents, or the public benefit, I guess I want to say, is, let's say, 30 to 40 years. The kind of financial credit benefit for the investor is about 15 years. And it's then generally where the investor will exit, and the developer often will be the long-term owner and guarantor that the rents will be charged to the right families of the project across the life, across that life cycle. There are two types of federal housing credits, and then plus there's a state credit here in Colorado, which we're really blessed to have. So generally speaking, the 9% housing tax credit equates to something like a 70% present value credit. It's very competitive. It's at least a 2-to-1 subscription, sometimes a 3-to-1 subscription each year for this resource. It's a population-based allocation. So unfortunately, CHFA does not have enough to meet the demand. We only have enough generally for about half the number of applications we receive. And it provides the deepest subsidy. So when you hear 9%, generally what you're thinking about is it will be the most robust subsidy. It will bring the most equity to help finance that affordable housing project. The 4% housing tax credit is a 30% present value credit, and it was made fixed to 4% in the tail end of 2020. So that was a great benefit for this program. It is a program that must be paired with private activity bonds. So you might hear PABs, private activity bonds. They go hand in hand with 4% credit reservations. It provides a shallower subsidy. So generally you don't receive as much equity to fill the needs that you have on your capital side to construct your project. And I'll show you some more information in a minute. So in that sense, the 4% housing tax credit doesn't allow a developer to drive rents as deep as the 9% program. With the 9% program, you can really stretch down into that far left side of the housing continuum, where maybe you might be serving households who are extremely low income and have very limited annual income amounts. The 4% housing tax credit program, that last bullet, can be paired with state competitive credits, and that's what we do at CHFA. Since 2014, the legislature has authorized a state credit program, and we pair that with the 4% program in order to make more projects feasible and to take some pressure off of the 9% tax credits so that we have the most feasibility across the spectrum that we can achieve each year. So looking at this in a different way across these bars, the first bar is really talking about conventional rental finance. So you would have about 70% debt, 30% owner equity, and conventional market rents. When you move into the 4% second bar, you're still financing a lot of your building with debt, financed with private activity bonds, and the 4% credits are bringing about 34-35% of the equity needed to construct. When we pair that with our state credit, which you see in the yellow as I move to the third bar, it's still paired with 4% credit, so about 34% of the total capital needs. Now you have an additional amount coming from state tax credits. Because your rents are a little bit lower, the developer can now be serving lower income households in the project. It unlocks the ability for soft funds, and soft funds are often distributed through DOLA, Division of Housing, but there are other resources. And you still have some debt in those projects, about 41%. This is as of September 21. I did some assessments. And then the last is the 9% housing tax credit, whereby it has the most equity brought to the capital needs through that program, unlocks soft funds, and you can really be driving rents to their lowest amounts because you can reduce the debt on the project. So I'm moving quickly, but hopefully this is sort of providing an illustration of how these programs really help to finance affordable housing. So here's a case study, and I just took a 60-unit building that was $18 million to construct. Here's a very kind of condensed version of their development costs: land, construction, professional fees, finance costs, soft, developer fee, and reserves. Now, all of these can be fleshed out into more nuanced expenses, but in general, in this example, land was about $1.8 million. Hard cost construction was about 12.7 million, professional fees $1 million, etc. Developer fee is sort of the profit, because there won't be, because of the restriction of use and the requirement to maintain lower rents for those 30 or 40 years. Developer fee at the front side is really sort of the hook that brings in a developer more than long-term cash flow. Developer fee of $1.2 million in this example, some reserves. And then how does it get paid for? Here's sort of the way that the sources and uses work. You still have a 30-year mortgage, maybe $2.5 million. Sub-debt can be sources from local communities, so it could come in the form of fee waivers, land donations, sometimes direct equity. The tax credit equity itself from the housing tax credit program really is, though, really that major financial resource that unlocks the feasibility for this project, $12.3 million in this example. Deferred developer fees are still that developer fee you saw on the previous uses chart. Here, the source is that the developer is taking their fee over a period of time, maybe 10 years. So they are receiving it more slowly, and it results in a source for the project. And then often those soft funds that I mentioned earlier, often coming from DOLA, Division of Housing, other sources, maybe $1.7 million in this example. So we have the uses of 18 million, and here we have sources of 18 million. The program works because it really is, it allows flexibility with heavy oversight and a public mission. So the developer manages that project with a long-term affordability for low-income residents. So the 30 to 40 years really is the vision when that project is conceived. So it has a long-term benefit paired with the private sector, so the investor, who is often assuming the majority of the risk, the financial risk for construction, putting their equity in up front, and they receive the tax credit benefit. It's a pass-through benefit for their corporate filing over 10 years with a look back over 15. Competitiveness for this program really generates strong ideas, very, very strong design, strong responsiveness to local community needs, thoughtfulness for resident populations. And across our country, each state, CHFA included, gets to customize the program through a QAP, a Qualified Allocation Plan. In Colorado, we have a biennial, a 2-year QAP, and those QAPs are signed in all states by the governor. At CHFA, we have 2 competitive rounds. Round 1, which we're heading into this coming spring, so we just received letters of intent for our February 1st round, is for 9% federal credit. Generally, it's oversubscribed by 2 to 1. The round usually takes between February to May for applications, and is the award of the 9% credit. The second round each year is round 2, where we're receiving competitive applications for state credit, which, as I said before, are paired with federal 4% credit and private activity bonds. LOIs are due June 1st. The round generally is August to November. It's competitive for state credit, and it is oversubscribed. Each year is slightly different, whether it's 2 to 1 or slightly yes. less. We have several priorities in our qualified allocation plan, and I wanted to mention them here because of this audience. The first one, or one of them, is that we have a priority at CHFA for projects that are in counties with a population of less than 180,000. So essentially for non-metro counties, of which Lake County would definitely be part of that. We also have priorities for projects that address homeless populations and special needs populations. Sometimes we get asked, well, what is the criteria that you're looking for awarding housing tax credits? And there's quite a lot in our qualified allocation plan, but in general, we're looking at every application for success in the standpoint of market conditions, whether it is proximate to other affordable or housing tax credit properties. Is there a readiness to proceed, an ability to proceed, ability to carry out the project within timeframes and milestones that need to happen? Is there strong financial feasibility and viability, not only of the project pro forma, but the team members involved, the not only construction side, but the long-term operating? We want to have a sense of who is the project team, their experience, track record. All of these things are part of what we assess when we're looking at allocation of credits. We look closely at project costs. We want to know that they're realistic and that they're not extravagant. So there's quite a lot of work there to make sure that it's not only feasible, but logical. And we look also at site suitability. Where is the site situated? Close to amenities that make sense for the resident population? Is it possible for schools, grocery, medical, lifestyle enjoyment, all of the things that any of us would want in our homes? So that's a very high level, rather quick overview of the housing tax credit program. And I guess I'll stop there and see if there are any questions. Thank you. How do I stop sharing? I just hit stop share. There we go.
I have a question.
Yes,
If
please.
you can hear me. I've heard rumors, we've had a lot of developers who have come to us and have been interested in LIHTC developments and mixed use housing developments. But I've also heard some rumors that there may be developers who are not quite as above board as others. What are the protection mechanisms in your office to assure that the developer that is applying is somebody that we would want to have do the project?
Let's see. So we lay out criteria in our document, the qualified allocation plan, sort of for what we need to receive from any project team. It's a program that requires quite a bit of expertise. And so it's not common for a developer or individual who has no background with this program to really receive success, not only from our analysis, but their partners, their lenders, their investors, others who need to be part of this program. So there's a robust vetting of any applicant that is working with the program. It's very common for maybe an entity who has not worked in the state of Colorado, maybe using this program in other states, or an entity, a development entity that is interested in working with affordable housing to use a local, like a Colorado-based low-income housing tax credit consultant. We have quite a variety here in our state that are really beneficial. So that's another resource that exists. And then of course, CHFA, we have quite a lot of resources on our website, webinars and trainings, et cetera, that we're always putting on that help people kind of learn about this field and see if it's a good fit for their risk tolerance and development models that they might be operating under. Does that answer the question?
It does. It sounds like any developer applicant would have to be fairly experienced, and you would have a pretty good idea of who they are.
We vet not only any applicant, but we want to know the whole team. So for example, we want to know who might be the investor in the development, lenders, property management, there may be service providers. So it's a very comprehensive analysis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathryn. I see Council Member Lauritsen has her hand up.
Thank you. Just a quick question on your last slide. You were it talked about some of the things you look at in the application. And I was wondering what the intent of the project being close to other low-income housing projects, what that intent was.
Yeah, thank you. I think the idea with that assessment often is to make sure that there's market success with any application. So it's more common in metro areas where you might be, you know, within a mile of two applications. And so you want to make sure that if they were both leasing at the exact same time, they would both experience market success, or it might be that one, it might be a disadvantage in a competitive round if there was a recent award in a particular market, because you would want to be certain that there would be success of a project already awarded before making a secondary award, so that there isn't any risk to either an existing project or there isn't a risk for two competing projects if they were awarded at the same time.
I have a question for you, Kathryn. I'm wondering if you have, if you do assessments of jurisdictions or areas and could supply a list of improvements that might make applications stronger.
I don't know if I quite understand the question. Assessments of local jurisdictions.
I guess you know, we are working to build multi-jurisdictional housing authority. And I suppose my question is maybe if you could outline some of those things just for the sake of kind of educating the whole group here, what strengthens the applications, though I'm sure a number of us around the table understand that. And would a housing authority be a part of managing that, or is that, as you said, only the developer's responsibility, or is there some level of partnership maybe between a housing authority managing those credits?
So I think the way I'd start by answering the question is there's no perfect way to do this. And so that part of the creativity or part of what needs to happen in each local community is part of the solution. It's not uncommon to see a local housing authority sometimes be a sponsor of the project, actually be the developer. In other cases, maybe just be a non-managing special limited part of the ownership group. One of the reasons for housing authorities often involved in this program is because in the state of Colorado, there's two statutes, I think, that essentially with that partnership, it allows local property tax abatement or the opportunity for property tax abatement. So it basically can be a resource, a financial resource for feasibility of the project. So I think that's one reason that it's not uncommon to see housing authorities be involved. It isn't necessary per se. It's a benefit to be considered. Other ways that to be more competitive, there's no real easy way for me to answer. We provide a lot of information. We try to be very open and transparent as projects are becoming feasible or considering different ideas. And we provide formal concept meetings ahead of all rounds, just so that any applicant can come to us with their idea and receive feedback before they maybe make a financial decision to be part of a tax credit round. It's not required that local jurisdictions somehow create certain resources or certain ways to be part of affordable housing, but it can be very beneficial, and it can be beneficial to indicate sort of local interest or support of a project, but it can be beneficial from a financial standpoint as well.
Question of those.
Yeah,
So
Commissioner Fiedler. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Fiedler, I had a question. So on one of your first slides, you pointed out that the LIHTC approach is focused more on that lower percent AMI. And I guess the question is, if a larger developer development or land parcel wants to also have some higher AMI or market rate or ownership opportunity approaches, can you sort of commingle that with a LIHTC project, or how does that work? Or does one parcel have to be entirely LIHTC and that's it for that parcel?
It's a very good question, and the answer is it depends. Because the housing credit building or project will essentially be a single asset entity, often it becomes its own legal description, if you will, but it's very common to see the idea of a community be proposed. So maybe the housing tax credit portion of that community is serving a particular need, and then it's paired with market rate construction or even ownership construction, and the land might be subdivided, but from a kind of external standpoint, it all looks like a unified community. I think, some of the things to evaluate from our standpoint would be timing of other aspects of a multi-phase parcel. We want to, if we receive an application for a housing credit development that's going to be part of a broader community, we usually want to understand how does that play into timing across the entire community. There would be questions around sort of the in-ground infrastructure work, and how does that play across all the different aspects of development that might be proposed. I think you also asked a question, or part of your question at the beginning was about the AMIs of eligibility. And it's what we often see is that within any single tax credit application, there's a spectrum of AMIs that might be proposed. So some at very low AMIs, maybe all the way up to 60, and there is a provision to even get to 80% AMIs. But it makes sense that a community may have a spectrum of needs, but you also are balancing the financial feasibility of the development, because higher rents can be real important for overall feasibility. So you often see a mix between 30 all the way up to 60. Ultimately, you want to make sure that it would be successful in the community. So there's a market study required and a variety of other ways that we look at that. But it sort of starts from the ground up. What makes sense in a particular community to serve the needs of that community?
I'd like to follow on that question, because it's long been my understanding that in a LIHTC development that the preference by CHFA was to have that more mixed use within let's say a 90-unit complex, and that maybe 50 of those would be 30 to 60% AMI, but the others could be higher AMI and some market rate within the same LIHTC development. Is that not correct?
No, I think I don't know if it's CHFA's preference, but we certainly have lots of examples like that. I think a couple of the challenges can be that investors tend to be less interested. They like to see the entire building that they're investing in be part of the housing credit program. It's less risk from an investment standpoint. But from a developer, you may see them sometimes propose a tax credit program project right next to a market rate project. It's two different ownership groups, two different leasing plans, quite different, but yet from a resident standpoint, it kind of presents a spectrum. So I think we don't discourage that, and we don't necessarily encourage that. We're looking to see what makes sense in each project and for each community.
So in a 90-unit apartment building, that's a 9% LIHTC project. Would any of those 90 units be able to be above 60 or even above 80% AMI, or would the entirety of those 90 units have to be within those AMI parameters?
There's nothing in the program that restricts a portion of the units from being above 60% or 80% AMI or market rate per se. So there's nothing that would disallow that. I think it's common that investors feel less comfortable if there are units that are income restricted and financed with low-income housing tax credits paired with market rate units. It represents risk, but there's nothing here that would prevent that proposal. It just would need to be understood, and you would need to test it out with the various partners that need to be assembled.
Thank you.
Do any other commissioners or council members have questions for Kathryn? Otherwise, I will hand over.
Tracy had her hand up.
Oh, Tracy, our Councilmember Lauritsen, please. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Mike, one other question. Could you talk a little bit about what a private equity bond is and our requirement as a municipality or a county to that bond?
Yes, and with some hesitation. I'm not on our finance side and I don't issue bonds. I'm not part of the team that does that issuance of private activity bonds, PABs. So there are requirements that are similar to what I was talking about with housing credit requirements in terms of resident income restrictions as well as long-term commitment for affordability. But the requirements of private activity bond regulations match up with housing tax credit requirements. And so there's no conflict there. The thing I think I would ask you to have a takeaway is that 4% housing tax credits can only be paired with private activity bonds. So I don't know off the top of my head if Lake County receives an allocation of private activity bonds, and maybe one of the commissioners would be aware, or the county manager, but it can be a resource that if received at the county level can be dedicated to a specific housing tax credit development, or can be in some cases you can, I guess, transfer it to CHFA as the conduit issuer. So we can basically do the issuance, but it helps support the financial feasibility of the project. Am I getting at your question a little bit there?
Yeah, so private activity bonds are something that already exists, and we would not be doing some new bond issue if we went with a 4% tax credit.
Private activity bonds are a annual allocation through DOLA, and then they're dispersed to something like 57 local issuers. And that's where I'm not sure if Lake County has enough of a population to be to receive an allocation each year of private activity bonds. If not, CHFA receives an allocation of private activity bonds, and so many cases we offer those as part of the 4% application.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that answered my question.
Okay. I don't see any other questions, and there'll be time for more across our presenters, but I would like to give Michael a chance to then speak to us as to what this might mean more specifically.
Sure. Well, Kathryn, first and foremost, thank you so much for doing that. You did a much better job than I could ever have done on LIHTC. Although I do appreciate that your opening picture was anthracite plates, because that was my LIHTC project. So a little place in my heart there. See that up and running still. Real quick, the last slide I think is what's really germane to how local government pairs with a potential developer. on that criteria. And the four that jump out to me are readiness, the project team, market conditions, and the site. And there's all different ways in which local government work within those four different things to help a developer along. Certainly site is the big one when you talk about a potential land dedication, and there's a whole different process whenever we're considering a public asset to build housing on. But also readiness speaks to being ready to with zoning approvals and having appropriate densities. And so working through the land use code or anything else like that, that would allow, again, a developer to proceed through the entitlement process, because at the end of the day, time is money as part of the process to this as well. So I think the, to Greg, to your question on how do you properly vet, the project team and introduction and knowing their background and what they've done and talking to other communities in which they operate is how we have vetted different LIHTC developers in the past. And so again, I would also say that CHFA has a robust process in which they vet. So there's a lot of protections inside the actual process and going through it. And to Kathryn's point, the 9% is a very competitive process. And so, if there is a potential for one of those projects landing in Lake County, I'm sure that we will be seeing some interest and having these discussions beyond just an application going directly to CHFA, because it is typical, Kathryn, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of those developers have established a relationship with the local municipality before submitting their application. That's my 2 cents on that. The only other piece of the puzzle that I will throw in there, just as elected officials to keep in mind, is when approached by the development community, was if there are going to be entitlement or land use issues moving forward, we always want to make sure that as staff we're able to assist in having those communications with the developer, so not to interfere with the quasi judicial process that may have to occur with a land use approval. And so if you have those developers come, certainly there's a great conversation that can happen about the project team. But as you start to get into site specifics or any kind of land use approvals, that's when I would lean heavily on staff and just to point them in that direction, so that we make sure that we protect that public process. And also that also allows the staff to initiate any kind of land use issues that might be in the way, and certainly talk about how we prioritize potential land use code changes or something along those lines. Because again, when you do make a code change, it benefits the whole community, not just a single project. So that's really why we want to shepherd those developers through. So with that, I think that concludes the LIHTC piece, unless there's any other questions. Kathryn and Jeff, I really want to thank you for showing up today. Again, did way better job than I could ever have done on that. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Any other closing questions for?
I don't think so. Thank you so
CHFA or
much.
SCEDD? Thank you very much. All right, and just to mention too, we are engaged with SCEDD, and we're going through our planning process to be competitive in next round for DOLA, and also to just do some community development in preparation, as Michael kind of was alluding to have staff educated and ready to respond to any of the development interests that we are seeing at the city and county. So it's really exciting to have you all at the table, Michael and Kathryn and Jeff. We do appreciate it. All right, moving on to our next item of business. We have a professional service contract and scope of work with Mark Sabatini of Galena Street Planning Group as our site analysis and planning facilitator. This person will work with Michael and staff and our land committee that's been convened or identified to further identify and vet all of our land opportunities and potential. Is that correct, Michael?
Yeah, and so I know this. I'm going to blend the next 3 agenda items a little bit, but we certainly can get into each of the each of the items as we go. But I wanted to put up here, this is what I put together is a housing calendar that kind of shows there's multiple parallel paths that are going to be going on over the next, especially 6 months. And as it relates to the DOLA grant that we received for planning. And so I want to kind of talk at a nebulous level, and then we can get into those specifics on the RFQ and the professional service agreement. Commissioner Mudge, if that's okay with you, because I think it's important to take an overview approach and then kind of get into the specific approvals for each of those. What I wanted to lay out is, what is, first and foremost, the Housing Coalition and the ballot initiative. I mean, there's so much creative momentum going on, and we are on the cusp of actually creating housing on multiple sites within the county and the city. And the DOLA grant really, again, if you think about where it's actually trying to get us, is to actually apply, which is on the bottom of here, for the grant in the fall, which is an actual $1 million to put into an actual housing project for the development of housing. And so it's really, how do we go from January to next fall and prepare ourselves to get into the position of being ready to build housing. One thing that was not allowed to be included in the DOLA application was looking at the site specifics and what site you might select for the DOLA grant. There are multiple publicly owned parcels that are controlled by different interests, and it's, in my own opinion, is it would be very hard to write $1 million grant not knowing engineered estimates for what horizontal infrastructure you're putting in. Unfortunately, DOLA considers that a pre-development cost and therefore was not eligible under the planning grant. And I guess what they're assuming is that most communities have vetted those sites before they proceed with their grant application. Well, one thing that I hope to have is basically two parallel paths going on. The first being a housing site analysis, and then the other ones being the ones below, which are really the policy-based decisions that the electeds need to go through over the next 6 months to, on the back end, allow one of those sites to be developed for affordable housing and proceed with the development grant. So really, I want you to see these as two parallel processes that are playing out with the outcome in the summer of both being, one, here are 3 specific sites and here are the costs to developing them. And then the secondary piece being, here are the community guidelines, here's all the policy considerations, and here's how the property will be developed. And both of those leading to a grant application on the back end. So, so this gets into kind of what the DOLA grant funds. So there is a staff report that highlights at a high level what the and if you haven't seen the staff report, this was part of your packet, but basically the grant allows for four uses of the grant money. One, there needs to be an update to the code relating to the disposition of county and city properties. In talking with the city's legal counsel, it sounds like that is probably in a good place, but there's the ability to look at title work to ensure that there's nothing that needs to be changed. And that's part of the grant. The $65,000 is to pull title work for the specific parcels that are publicly owned. There is a piece to talk about the development potentially of a regional housing authority and to talk about who's going to administer guidelines, lotteries, sale, rental projects. And that is a piece that the Housing Coalition kicked off initially last fall that I was involved in. But it's really getting those community guidelines to the place where the new housing director position will be able to administer those guidelines and do lotteries for future projects. There is an allocation of funding to allow a conversation with the water and wastewater districts and potential incentives that they might be able to offer if they're able to, especially around publicly extending utilities to publicly owned parcels. And finally, which you'll see when we get to the housing calendar, there is a piece to review the potential code amendments if necessary to allow for housing. I see a hand up.
That's me. Hey, Michael, this is Kayla. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I just have a quick question about the grant money to engage sewer and water districts. Does that also include giving them information on opportunities for infrastructure funds from the federal government and state government, or is that separate from this work, or does that have a relationship to it?
That is a great question. So to answer the question directly, it is definitely separate. But one thing that my organization does that we're primarily responsible for is connecting local governments and special districts with federal and state funding, especially if it's the EDA. So I think there's going to be a nexus there because of SCEDD's involvement, and especially given the new infrastructure bill that was recently passed by the feds and our ongoing conversations with DOLA. And the comprehensive economic development strategy that we worked on with Lake County actually outlines all of those projects. So we're well aware of the needs of the water and wastewater district. So it indirectly, does the DOLA grant pay for that? No, but indirectly we're at the table, correct?
Okay.
So I want to go back to the a couple of key tasks that are going to be happening over the next couple of months. You know, the one thing I'm very cognizant of myself is that you guys are working towards the hiring of a housing director. And I think that position really is important for that person to potentially be, or should be in place before we proceed way down the road on several of these key tasks that are outlined on this housing calendar. And the reason for that is the person you hire should be involved in strategic direction around housing, and they're going to bring their own thoughts to the table, and they don't need the Bible of Michael Yerman to dictate how they do their job day one. And I'm very cognizant of that, and I want to respect that that timeline, or this housing timeline respects bringing them on and onboarding. But what this timeline allows for is for us to continue to get that runway built for when that position touches down. So first and foremost, for instance, getting the RFQ out for the site analysis and getting the architect and engineer and the team in place. Those types of activities, while it would be great to have the person at the table, are not necessarily like dire straits. But when we start talking about community guidelines, for instance, and land donation policies, and also the development of housing strategies, those absolutely need to have a housing director at the table. And so you can see why those are kind of pushed a little bit further down the timeline into the late winter, February and March timeframe. Before we have any public charrettes, we hope to have the new housing director on board so that they are part of the public process that the housing site analysis will go through. And then as you can see, as we kind of get into like land donation policies and some more of the technical stuff, at that point, the housing director should be in place and be at the table as part of that. The final big piece of the puzzle that relates to kind of the planning work is twofold. One is getting the community guidelines adopted, which again, the housing director, that's going to be their baby to foster and take forward and administer. So we will make sure that we get there with them involved. And then finally, the development of how we're going to develop property. It's a public-private relationships. We're doing it through RFQs. There's 100 different ways to build a house. How are we as a community going to foster? How are we going to get those lands ready? What kind of horizontal costs? And the good thing is that I hope that by the time we get done with the housing analysis process, we have 3 potential landing places and locations for housing. The reason we're only sticking with 3 in this process is really important, is that engineered estimates change yearly. And to be 100% honest with everyone in the room, it is not feasible in any reality to build more than 3 housing projects in a span of 3 years. We'll be lucky if we do 2. I think we actually can do 2, especially with the progress that the city is making with the SHIP grant. And that process going off and running as it is today. And then the potential of the DOLA grant being the second project moving forward. But we want to make sure that those engineered estimates are actually true costs. And we don't want to be looking back on, spending money on something that 5 years from now is completely out of date and we have to redo anyways. The other piece that will be really important about that housing site analysis is I hope that process also illuminates any land use code issues that we need to tackle as a community. And as you can see down in the gray, in my gray, there's the city and county code amendment. And you can see that that's, again, taking place in the late summer as part of this whole process. Finally, the goal of all of this is that DOLA actually, right here in this gray, this is a key milestone, as a DOLA requires qualified strategies, i.e. land use code amendments, to be adopted prior to the grant application in the fall. And so there are certain qualified guidelines that we will continue to make sure we're targeting and hitting as part of the overall grant to make sure that Lake County and the city of Leadville are eligible. So that, I'm sorry, I just kind of spewed, so I'll answer any questions there, and then I will jump into kind of the more technical formalities next.
I don't think I see any questions at the moment, Michael, if you want to.
Okay, great. So there's a couple things today that are kind of housekeeping items. One is we want to get the RFQ moving forward for the selection of the architectural and engineering firm. We also have in the packet a professional service contract with Mark Sabatini, who has done a similar site analysis process with the town of Frisco, and which we're kind of modeling this off of. We hope to engage Mark sooner rather than later, because he can certainly help with the facilitation of getting the process. I will speak just very openly. I'm going to be very busy with the other items around the community guidelines and some of the strategic discussions, that having an additional set of hands at the table are going to really help continue to move that land site analysis along without it being held up because of my availability. So there is that. And then secondarily, the one kind of technical piece to cover under the RFQ is that the way we have structured the RFQ is that the county would administer the actual contract, professional service contract with the architect and engineering firm. And that's kind of important for the city to realize, in that it's going to be easier to have one contracting entity that they basically cut the check at the end of the process. And so what it would require is basically an agreement with the city and county to make sure that the city's contribution to the site analysis is paid for to the county, and then the county pays directly to the contractor. It's just, I guess the easiest way of saying it is it's just an easier way of making sure that the process moves forward without having to execute different contracts. So that is kind of in the RFQ, the structure of that. Beyond that, again, the total budget for this is anticipated to be $50,000, a $20,000 contribution from the county, a $20,000 contribution from the city, and then the Lake County Economic Development Corporation has contributed $10,000. Okay. So today what we're looking for are two actions around this. One would be to allow the release of the RFQ, and we will post it via the county's protocol. And so that is an action. And then the second is the approval of the professional services contract with Mark Sabatini.
Thank you, Michael. All right, yeah. So technically following that, item number 2 is that professional services contract and the scope of work, which has been reviewed by legal, and we do have in hand. I personally don't have any questions on this, and would be happy to consider this today. And commissioners, do you have any questions on the specifics here? It looks like the scope of work is a estimated time frame of about 6 months, not to exceed $10,000. And yes, having jumped into this with Michael and SCEDD and staff, we sure could use the additional resources to get all those parts and pieces moving in preparation for a fall application.
I don't have any questions.
I don't have any questions either. I'll just say thanks. I mean, I think it's super helpful to just keep showing us this context of, this large one-pager timeline of the different elements of the project is great, just to keep all the 20-some pieces straight in our head. So
Yeah, Michael, I would imagine that we do have we want to stick to this timeline pretty tightly, correct?
It's extremely aggressive for what we're trying to accomplish, but the failure to stay on time is going to be failure to go after DOLA funding.
Okay, okay.
Commissioners, Chris Lloyd here. I just wanted to note that Mr. Sabatini's on the meeting today as well, but he took a look at the draft agreement that I sent over to him and has a couple of questions. So my request today would be, if you're comfortable going forward with the contract with the Galena Group, would be to approve it pending final legal review. I don't anticipate any material issues, but just want to make sure he has the opportunity to have his questions answered before it's signed off on.
That sounds good, Chris. We appreciate that. And in part, I think linked back to some of the comments you made and Commissioner Marcella's question about some of that capacity building and just education around funding that's available for special districts. Would Mark's role in part be communicating with Parkville and sanitation districts for some of the site preparation? And we don't have to get into this conversation necessarily now, but I think that there are there is another project that we really would love to chat with Parkville and sanitation about in trying to maintain housing for about 30 residents, or I should say 30 homes with community members in them. I think with some fee increases at Parkville and sanitation, it would be really great to have somebody to help assist not only us, but those special districts in navigating all of that. Because I would venture to say that like most all of us, bandwidth is thin, and they might be increasing fees and or facing projects without realizing all that might be available to them.
So Mark's role would not be to engage on that level. Mark's role would be to engage around the 3 selected sites. My role is to help with that conversation, sir.
Perfect.
So I am happy as part of the DOLA grant, I can assist with that those conversations. And if you look at the housing calendar, there's actually a big gap in the special district engagement. So what I would suggest is that we schedule that kickoff meeting and we create an agenda around that. So that, and again, another big piece of the puzzle too, as it relates to the housing DOLA grant, is we won't know exactly what the ask is of those 2 districts until we know what the sites are going to look like and what kind of needs the sites will have. But as it relates to those other issues and discussions about an IGA with the county or the city, those are certainly germane to, and especially if it's around housing, it's certainly germane to the services that SCEDD is providing through the DOLA grant to assist with those conversations. And if it leads to any formal agreements, those kind of things, especially around housing, those qualify under the DOLA grant. Make sense?
Yes. Yep. Thank you. Mark, would you like to have a chance to speak to us, or I don't think you have much resistance on our end.
Well, thank you. Absolutely. For the record, Mark Sabatini. Michael and I have spent a fair bit of time chatting about this project, this process, and 2 observations. 3, the community appears to be poised to make some real change, and housing is community. Thirdly, Chris Lloyd and I have had a brief conversation electronically. My questions with respect to the professional services agreement is quite, they're dotting i's, crossing t's. And I look forward to being involved. Will await authorization to proceed.
Thank you.
So quick question, Michael, when, pending approval with Mark Sabatini, then will his engagement primarily be just with that land committee and not necessarily all three of us, correct? And then we'll come together for an update on the progress that's been made in that committee?
Yes, correct. Again, around the land committee selection and the site selection, we'll continue to check back with the electeds as a whole, not just the BOCC, but the city council as well. There's some, as you can imagine, or when you talk about property, there are some one-on-one conversations that we want to allow to occur if we're going to use a site, and specifically if it's not completely controlled by either county or city. And so we want to allow for those, the land committee, and we're actually probably going to just keep those a very small group. We've talked with Tim, and Tim's really going to be the kind of the initiator of those conversations with each of the entities, and bring in even it might even be inappropriate for myself, for instance, to be at the table, depending on who the audience is for the first initial conversation. So I'm relying heavily on Tim to help with that. But once we have those conversations, we will come back prior to the selection of the three sites to talk with the BOCC and City Council to give you an update on what was considered, et cetera. And Mark's role in that is once we get past those really one-on-one conversations and that we've gotten the thumbs up to talk about their property, Mark will be part of the larger land committee to talk through all the site-specific things around each property and to guide those conversations and to get them ready for the architectural and engineering analysis that needs to occur.
Okay. Cool.
Great. If there's no other, do you have a question?
No.
Okay, no other questions. I'm happy to entertain a motion for approval of engagement with Mark Sabatini doing business as the Galena Street Planning Group, pending final legal review.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion?
No, thank you.
None for me.
Okay, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Great, thank you so much, Michael and Mark. Let me pull up our next. Sorry. All right, and then that RFQ site analysis, Michael. I think I would be happy to entertain a similar motion, pending, final legal review on that as well, and we'll just get these things moving and we'll get that posted. I think there was a request for those submissions to be back January 10th or somewhere around the beginning of January.
Yeah,
Okay.
can we just put that on the calendar quickly to the milestones on there? Like submissions are due January 10th for the RFQ?
Yes. And those will go to Anne. Are those going to go to? Okay, I lost.
And then
the document.
when is the board supposed to approve and select the contractor for that?
So the land advisory committee will conduct the interviews and the vetting, and then there will be a formal, just like with Mark, there'll be a formal process. And actually looking at their calendar, is probably going to be the first meeting in February, to be honest with you, just with the formalities of how things will happen. But depending on the amount of interest we receive, it'll kind of dictate how that process. If it's three applicants, then certainly we can do interviews of all three. If it's 20, then we have to start going through kind of a short list type of process. So that's really why I would say it's probably going to push into February, depending on how it comes out.
Okay.
All right. I don't have any other questions for you on that, Michael. Let's see. Sorry, I was just trying to read through to see if I was missing anything else to catch there. But I don't think so. And those costs are covered within the DOLA grant, correct, Michael?
No, this process is this is the 2020-10 matches from the city, county, and
Yes, okay. The matching commitments for, yep. All right. Great. And there's some budget outlined in the RFQ. So I'm happy to entertain a motion for the approval of the, are we calling it an RFP or an RFQ?
RFQ.
Okay, it says RFP.
Oh, it says RFQ on his.
yeah, I might have screwed that up. I'm sorry, guys.
That's all right. Potato, sort of, but
Sort of.
what would you like? What would you Qualifications, Michael? RFQ?
You're making me look. I guess it's fine.
On the document you sent, it says request for proposal.
Yeah, we can call it RFP. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. All right, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the request for proposal for Lake County and City of Leadville Affordable Housing Site Analysis to be posted.
So moved.
Second,
All right, great. Any further discussion?
None for me, thank you.
none for me.
All right, hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, fantastic. And let's see, then you want to touch on the DOLA IGA, please, Anne?
So part of the DOLA grant, when we spoke with them, was the creation of an IGA between the city and the county to discuss the scope of work and cooperation on the collaboration. So understanding that the city and the county each did a resolution about supporting the grant and the match. DOLA gave us late last week some examples of the content that they want in that IGA, and it's more about the scope of the work. And so we will get that over to city and county legal for review. We do need to get it executed prior to the start of the work. So it will have an urgency when we get it
When will
over.
that be?
And so our agreement, they wanted some of the wording of the agreement included in there. So that'll be the beginning of January or mid-January.
It could be on our first city council meeting in January. If we have
Yeah,
one.
I was maybe our second meeting in January.
Perfect.
Okay, if council can approve first and then we can.
All right. Sorry.
That would be January the 4th.
Is your first one?
Ground running.
So that makes you the 11th.
10. No, ours would be the 17th.
That may be a holiday. It would be the 18th possibly instead if you're,
Oh, yeah.
if you're off on the 17th.
And if we find out from DOLA that we need to have it any sooner from the BOCC, they'll let you know in case you need a special.
And we can do, yeah, we can set up a special one. Okay. Sure thing. Okay, and then last on our list of items for new business, we have the housing director IGA between the city and the county. This is an IGA between the city and the county for the hiring of a housing director position. That position and throughout our work may very well roll into combined work with the housing authority, but right now the housing director position will be hired and focused on the current housing work that we are doing, and we'll continue to work collaboratively with the city to see how all that might evolve and integrate.
I did discuss that with the housing authority when I was at their previous meeting. They're fine with that. They understand that ultimately that may be where that person resides. In terms of
Their operating structure.
Yeah, yeah,
They have a bit of a ways to
And,
go.
and at least that's on their mind right now.
Okay,
We just
great.
don't know how long it would take to put all that into play.
Appreciate you mentioning that to them.
Yeah.
And I think on this item too, we should entertain craft the motion pending final legal review. Chris, I see you're unmuted as well. Was that going to be your comment?
Well, yes, somewhat in part. And that was also, I know that I sent out the marked up version, which had the comments from both City Attorney McCormick and I on it. And I just wanted to note that I received an email from Ms. McCormick late this morning requesting another minor change to paragraph 5.8.4, which has to do with the payment dates and the way those are phrased, so that instead of it reading the city shall pay the first payment in the amount of $52,500, it would be the city shall pay the first payment in an amount not to exceed $52,500. And then the second payment, a similar change for that, where it says the city shall pay the county a second payment in the amount of $17,500. That would be changed to, payment in an amount not to exceed $17,500. So those are just two late breaking requested changes that the city attorney requested, which I don't have any issues with, but wanted to bring that to your attention in case there was any questions you had. And perhaps I know that the mayor met with Ms. McCormick last week to go over the red line draft and stuff. And I know that at least my understanding, the version y'all have now with the red lines is the last one from Ms. McCormick reflecting those and any responses I had. So I think it would be appropriate to approve. I think we're ready to approve it pending that finalizing into a clean version for that.
Great. Much appreciated. Any questions for staff or legal on the IGA for the position?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Chris, will you send us a copy with that addition into it for us to have a final look at, or what's the?
Yes, I just wanted to get the red line to you because we had a couple of different versions that were floated around. I wanted to make sure you had the most current one and could see what recommended changes were made by both Ms. McCormick and I. And so I will produce a clean version with all of the changes in that red line that was sent to you, plus the one she requested this morning for it to be not to exceed amounts from the city. And the explanation there, which I don't know if the mayor wants to, but it had to do with trying to make the language consistent about payment amounts of what the county pays the housing director. And if it ends up being less than what is projected of the, I think, $105,000 a year, that's the maximum salary. So if it ends up, whoever you hire is less than that, then the payments obviously between the parties would be adjusted to reflect the actual amount of that reduced amount. Now, of course, the question becomes, if you can't hire anybody for that $105,000, that would be a question, and we might need to circle back with the city to amend the IGA in that event.
Okay.
I did tell Christiana, and she may have told Chris Lloyd that I'm open to that as a possibility. We don't know what's going to happen in terms of finding the right person to do this. If it turns out that person is going to be more than what we've all agreed to, what we agreed to was speculative based on what we think we know about the marketplace. So if it turns out to be something different than that, we're willing to deal with it.
Okay.
All right.
I just had the comment. I mean, I think because we aren't in a situation where we yet have the multi-jurisdictional housing authority, and I just want to, especially with city council here and the mayor, just, as we go forward with a housing director, that's sort of formally a county position, but with this IGA, it's a bit of a weird situation, and just sort of, as we've been doing, let's make sure we make every effort to stay talking about all the 20 different priorities that are going to be on this person's plate, and that we're all sort of at the right tables and in the right meetings, so that no one gets surprised by anything that's getting done until.
I hope that new person is pretty darn sharp.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
do
and-
do we need to take any formal action on that then? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yes, no, yeah, we need to approve the IGA pending final legal review. But I just want to comment to Commissioner Fiedler's point. You know, as you say, there are many tables to be around and organized groups and committees and meetings. And I think if we're finding that things are falling through the cracks as far as like a formal or full presentation or update, maybe we can try to have a standing agenda every month or every other month to give city council as a full board in the regular meeting and the BOCC as well, some updates. But, all right.
Okay. So I will make a motion to approve the IGA with the city and county for the housing director position pending final legal review.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion?
I don't think so. Thank you.
None for me.
Very exciting. All right, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Great. Excellent. All right, well, that concludes our new business items. And we
Sorry, this on the cover, I don't want to interrupt on the motion and everything, but around the conversation around the planning, that conversation is actually germane to one of the first steps that we had on that calendar and talking about potentially a joint meeting of the city council and BOCC around housing. And one of those, that around that bigger discussion is creating, and I'm going to share my screen again here because there's three. I see that agenda as kind of a 3-task agenda in looking at kind of an overall creation of a 5-year housing goals and really approaching it at a very high level, knowing that the new position is going to bring about their own kind of discussion about what priorities they should also be considering. We can couple that with the community guideline kickoff, because there's some big question discussions that I would love to have with both elected officials in the room to provide guidance, i.e. who qualifies for housing, those types of issues. And then, the final piece of the puzzle being more of this idea around what a regional housing authority could potentially look like, that this conversation you were just having. And certainly I can bring resources to the table around that little piece of the puzzle as well, to try to help guide that. But I think, again, this would help pave the way for the new position by providing some strategic visioning. And certainly it could be, this is also something that was contemplated under the DOLA grant. And so this is something that certainly could be there. And I've spoken with Tim, we would love to invite the Housing Coalition. They've been intimately involved in housing and advocacy. And so they could potentially be, helping with the agenda and bringing, they've set their own goals and priorities as well. So making sure that dialogue is included in the overall discussion around housing. So if that's something that is of interest, we could certainly look to the next joint meeting and doing something like that.
And I think that's a brilliant, sorry, Jim.
No.
I think that's a great idea. The Housing Coalition has been at this for 4 or 5 years. Their voice should be important to the process. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. No, just to reiterate kind of your comments before the motion and then everything Michael said, to actually operationalize this new position, it would be nice for them to have something to look at, that higher level strategic review from elected officials, from the public, the Housing Coalition. People are invested and have been working on this for a long time, just so that this person has something more than Michael, Ann, and I to go off of. It also, provides them a little structure and then gives them an idea of the challenges they'll face, but also the goals that you guys set for them.
Okay. Did you have a date for that?
I am pretty much open. The one thing I will say is I do have a commitment, basically the week of the from the 21st to the 28th. I'm pretty in January. That's really the only week that I have some other stuff going on. But other than that, we could certainly look at the first week in February or the weeks ahead of that. From my end, the facilitation of that isn't isn't a huge overreach. A lot of the work is, a lot of the work's going to come from the actual dialogue. And so it's just a matter of ensuring that Christy from the Housing Coalition can also participate. And I know she's back after the first of the year. So.
Okay. And that's just with city and county around these topics.
Correct. Again, I think these three right here are what would be the primary agenda.
Okay, and so without special districts being involved in those, go in that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we want to start at 100,000 feet.
Okay.
Right? And I will say that as the facilitator, I'm going to make sure we stay at a high level because we want to respect the new position coming on board and the assets that they're going to bring and the opinions they're going to bring. But I will tell you that having, for instance, is our goal to start developing new housing, which I'm sure is probably going to be one of the goals that come out of this. Them having just a very kind of high level, this is where we're headed, so that they have a landing. So, and again, around the guidelines, there's a lot of kind of higher level political input that is required on some of the bigger decisions that I think is good for you guys to create the guardrails right off the bat, so that we don't veer off a direction that the electeds are uncomfortable with, and that we have some expectation setting.
Okay.
That February 1st, is that a city council regular meeting? And if we want to aim for the convenience and the typical time frame for council, I suppose we'll do it in evening.
We may want to discuss that at council, see if we want to, I mean, I don't see why we would change it, but it is yeah.
Okay.
That probably is going to be the first city council meeting.
So would that be convenient to combine that there or schedule another meeting? Or you can ask council that question, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay. Otherwise, I would say, I mean, the first Wednesday evening is typically other special districts have meetings, and I don't know if we want to try to have that conversation before their meeting on the 2nd, which gives us those 2 days. But if that can't align, then we just need to do what'll get us all in the room, I think. Commissioner Gowing or Councilmember Gowing, any thoughts on that?
Well, for one thing, sanitation district, I believe we're going to be pushing our meetings back at 5 o'clock due to a member having work conflicts. And as far as this month, just with budget and everything, we did push back to the 2nd Wednesday.
Okay. Okay.
I have a feeling we'll stick to the first Wednesday for February.
Okay.
Okay.
Your meeting this week is still at 3:30?
No, this is going to be, they were going to post today for 5 p.m. due to the work conflict with one of our board members.
Well, I think we can, on the county side, we can easily arrange and be flexible. And I, again, I'm assuming an evening convening perhaps for council.
For council, that would be tenable because we have city council members who have day jobs, and
Yep.
the majority of them do.
Yep.
Okay.
No, that sounds good. So we can be pretty flexible if you want to get back to us on
Thank you.
kind of the polling of council that you hear
I'm
this
going to
week.
assume that will be fine, but we'll let you know.
Okay.
Other than that, are any loose ends right now?
So,
Thank you so much for preparing everything for us on all aspects here. This is.
And I did forward in the chat, Tracy had asked for the presentation. So I did email all council members the calendar and the staff report. So, and
I'm getting, Sarah, I'll send it to both you and Ann. I do have the PowerPoint from Kathryn. I'm trying to find it. So you'll have that in your inbox here shortly.
Great. Cool. Great. All right. Okay. I think now that concludes new business items, and we'll go into some housekeeping matters.
sure.
Switch back to my agenda here. All right, so we have reports, minutes, bills, and payroll. We have Veteran Service Officers Report for October 2021.
I will make a motion that we approve the veteran service officers reports for October 2021.
Second,
All right, any further discussion?
None for me, thank you.
none for me.
Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I,
All right, moving on to minutes that have been tabled a bit. Our special meeting minutes held July 22nd, 2021. Patty, I see you're on the line. Did you get those comments that I had sent on the, I think it was the 15th, maybe?
I did receive them. Thank you.
Okay, so are we okay with some comments on that meeting in particular?
I'm okay with the changes you made.
Okay. The board, sorry, I'm just pulling those.
Was Chris reviewing the July 22nd meeting minutes as well?
She had some comments on the 26th, which I will also pull up, but I think what Patty had sent as an update on a more final version from what I reviewed looked okay. And I didn't have any other questions there.
This is Chris. I was just gonna say, I did review them back, I guess, November 18th or something, but I think there might have been some revisions after that. And so as long as y'all are comfortable with what they say, I don't need to see those as well.
No, I'm fine with them.
Okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of our special meeting, July 22nd, 2021.
So moved.
second,
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I,
Great. And next on the list. Sorry, I'm just going back and forth. Need to close some documents here. All right. And do we have a second set, or was that a mistype there for July 22nd?
That was a second set. You had a morning meeting and an afternoon meeting.
I don't know. What was the agenda for the morning meeting, Patty? Was that the LCCHP?
No, I was confused. I was thinking it was the CBOE decisions. That was on the 26th.
26th. Okay, so that is just a duplicate.
Yes, it is.
Okay, that's what I had thought. Okay. All right, and then the CBOE, I think, looked fine as well. I don't have any further comments on those. Anything else from either of you?
no,
Okay, entertain a motion for the approval of the CBOE meeting minutes on July 26th, 2021.
So moved.
second,
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I.
Great.
Sorry, I just one question on that. I don't know what's the right procedure for, are the minutes of our meeting the sort of formal documentation of that? Because we had that email from Stephanie McBride, the deputy assessor, with sort of their spreadsheet recording the decisions. And I wasn't sure what the formal decision document is for that. Like, again, if it's the minutes, or I can't remember if we signed a separate decision out of there, or if it's held by the assessor.
I don't think we signed anything. Patty, you take all those decisions made in that meeting and you notify the individual petitioner, correct?
Correct. And then I give a copy of the letter that I mailed to them to the assessor's office as well, so that we're all on the same page with what the decision actually was, so it can be passed on to the treasurer.
Okay, great, then.
And then if they go through a further step, they go to the BAA, and that's does not really include us.
Not until a decision is made or there's a stipulation that's been met.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sorry, did we take a roll call on that, I think?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. And then we have a special meeting held July 26th, which we had some comments given to us. I think a couple of those I would like to review. and make some changes just on some language so that there's clarification in the petitions for exemption or the request for exemption that were received. I can share my screen and then okay. Patty, I can forward this to you as well, but so I'm sharing my screen and let's see, we had that resolution number. There was a question on that. Because we were finalizing the adoption of the resolution on the 22nd.
It was resolution number 16. That was correct.
For the 26th, the meeting on the 26th?
Yes.
Okay, and to finalize the adoption of the resolution. So this here would be 15.
No, 15 is something else. Just a minute.
Would it be a new number if there's a amendment to the resolution?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. I think that's where I'm getting confused. Patty, can you hear me?
Yeah, her resolution.
Yeah, I was just asking, before you dig, I think my confusion, I was assuming that we would give it, this resolution on the 26th, a new number, but if we're amending it, it keeps the same number. Is that right? Okay, then.
And resolution 15 was for Angel View.
Okay. All right, thank you, Patty. If we could just include that resolution number reference, that would be great. And then the spelling on Mr. Greer's name.
Greer.
And he was present. He is the Pan-Arc attorney included in there. And then the BOC's review of the service plan district. And so this one, I think I wanted to strike or just be sure that we had the right language. And then the following paragraph, no requests were made at the public hearing for exclusion. I just want to strike that and include this language here to make it clear that we did receive, or the county's legal did receive requests for exclusion, and we did follow that process properly leading up to the July 22nd public hearing. Also, if we could include that language, I would prefer that. I'm seeing head nods over here. And then I think that just kind of follows through the rest of those minutes. But I can send this to you, Patty, and commissioners. Do you have any other comments on any changes or questions? Okay, great. Then I'll entertain a motion for approval with the outlined changes of special meeting on July 26th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any further discussion?
No, none for me, thank you.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Great, thank you. And let's do it again. Okay, and then the next two meetings I was out of town for. So we have minutes for the regular meeting held August 2nd, 2021, and the regular minutes for the meeting of August 16th, 2021.
I just want Katie Welter to review the UP stuff just to make sure we captured it correctly, because I think sometimes that legal jargon can get a little bit confusing. So if we can table those to let her review those, and we'll do them at our next meeting in December, if that's okay.
Okay, both of those?
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
And I'll send those over to her
Okay.
now.
Yeah, and I have some edits as well, and especially on that one paragraph about the resolution to authorize the offer to purchase real property. So I can.
You want to
send
send those to?
Maybe you can make
Yeah.
that request to
Okay.
Katie with those
Okay.
Okay.
comments included, and we'll get that back to you, Patty, ASAP for approval at our next meeting.
Thank you.
All right, no,
Thanks,
thank
Patty.
you. And Patty, do you have all the minutes that have been approved? Do you have those ready for signature? for
I
us?
do.
Or-
I do.
Okay, okay. Well, we will be sure to stop in then and sign those.
Okay.
And finally, thank you, Patty. Finally, on our housekeeping, we have bills. I'll entertain a motion for approval of bills and payroll for pay period ending November 26th, 2021.
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion?
None for me, thank you.
All right,
None
all
for me.
those, hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Fantastic. All right, and let's see, I'm just taking a scan on Zoom. Okay, I think with that then, at 2:55, we will adjourn.
All right.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.